we need to be working with Russia, cooperating to reduce our nuclear weapons and to have peace. And yet Trump becomes president, and then everybody starts blaming Russia, like all the Democrats and the liberals and even progressives. They start blaming Russia, that Russia hacked our election system and they are responsible for Trump or whatever. So this Russiagate, this whole Russiagate chapter, it did a lot of damage to the cause of nuclear disarmament and peace with Russia. So can you talk more about Russiagate and yes, tell us more about Russiagate and why it was so wrong.
Sure. I would note beforehand that, you wonder why people don't trust the media. When you think that, what was it, 74 million people voted for that clown Trump? My God. Why was that? Well, you think the people now who resist reasonable precautions like masks on your face for COVID, well, they don't trust the media. And of course, the media has given them ample reason not to be trusted. So, it's kind of a two-edged sword. If you look at Russiagate, those people who were skeptical about what was happening proved to be right. Now, I have to really say beforehand here, I hear my wife's admonitions ringing in my head here. Ray, for God's sake, tell them what you think about Donald Trump. Okay, I think he's the worst president we ever had. Worse than George W. Bush? Yeah. That's saying something, all right? Now, does that mean that he was wrong on everything? It doesn't mean that. We intelligence analysts follow the evidence, okay? Now, here's what the evidence. I have to go back to June of 2016. When Julian Assange, whom we mentioned before, announced that we have emails relating to Hillary Clinton, and they are pending publication, June 12th, 2016. Right away, 2 days later, comes out a report from CrowdStrike, a very, very sophisticated but often wrong cyber firm, that there are indications that the Russians were responsible for hacking those emails from the DNC. And the next day, Guccifer 2.0 arises from the ashes and says, yes, CrowdStrike is right, and I'm it. I did it for the Russians. Now, fast forward. That's June 12th, 2016. Next big thing is June 22nd, 2016. I'm sorry, July 22nd, 3 days before the Democratic National Convention. What happens? WikiLeaks releases these emails from the DNC. What did the emails show? They showed quite simply that Hillary Clinton and the DNC had stolen the nomination from Bernie Sanders. How many of you have read the emails? Oh, nobody. Well, the reason you didn't read them, because all the headlines say, why did the Russians do this? Why did the Russians do this? Why did the Russians do this? It worked like a charm. In other words, you remember the old book, A Magnificent Obsession, I think it was? Well, this was a magnificent diversion, okay? Blame the Russians for this, distract all attention from what the emails actually said, and just go along with this Russia thing. Besides, the ancillary benefit, of course, is to please Wall Street and the arms manufacturers and make sure that a viable enemy is still around so you can do this arms making and arms selling. Now, don't take my word for it. There was a Russian intelligence service report, an analytic report, released on the 26th of July, 2016, which said Hillary Clinton had given the order to make sure that the Russians were blamed for A, B, C, and D, and she had given that to correspondence and everything else, okay? Well, how do I know that? Oh, because John Brennan, the head of the CIA at the time, filed a crimes report with the Department of Justice. A crimes report is when there's an unauthorized leak of intelligence information. So this was genuine, okay? This is what the Russians were reporting back to Moscow. And the crimes report was made, and Obama was briefed on this, okay? Now what happened? Well, right after the convention, and I have this from, what's her name? Palmieri, who was the PR person for Hillary Clinton. She said at a meeting where I was, she said, you know, we couldn't believe that Putin was doing this, and we tried to sell it at the convention to the broadcast and the cable networks, but they couldn't believe it either. But, and this was Jennifer Palmieri. But when we got back to Brooklyn, of course, was DNC headquarters, was Hillary's headquarters. Got back to Brooklyn, then intelligence sources and correspondents, journalists connected with intelligence sources will begin to show that it was true, that the Russians had hacked into the DNC, and it was true. Then the Obama administration would confirm those things. And so then we were, okay, what am I saying here? I'm saying that there was a dual purpose here. First, to blacken Trump so he wouldn't win. And then when that didn't work, make sure that he was burdened with this being nice to Russia stuff so that he couldn't possibly work out some kind of arrangement whereby Russia would not be the chief enemy anymore, where there might be a rapprochement or even a détente with Russia. That would be very bad for arms sales. So there were a lot of people involved in making sure the Russians were blamed for this. Now, the whole thing fell apart. And maybe I'll just stop here. The whole thing fell apart in December of 2017, December 5th, 2017, when the cyber firm that was hired by the DNC, the cyber firm named CrowdStrike, to whom the FBI sort of deferred to do the forensics on the DNC hack. Okay, the cyber firm was CrowdStrike. The head of the cyber firm, his name was Sean Henry. He testified before the House Intelligence Committee on the 5th of December, 2017. Remember that? And he said, you know, we have no evidence, no technical evidence that anything was hacked out of the DNC, that those emails were hacked by Russia or by anybody else. And they grilled him. They said, well, no technical evidence? No technical evidence. Now, that's December 5, 2017. Did Mueller know that? Of course he did. Did other people in Congress know that? Of course they did. Mueller had just sort of well into his investigation. Why was that hidden until May 7th of last year, 2020? Well, I'll leave that to your own imaginations, but on May 7th, 2020, it was revealed that this happened, this testimony was taken and was kept under wraps by Adam Schiff until he had to release it because the head of the National Intelligence Setup had said, look, If you're not going to release it, I'm going to release it. So it was released. Okay. Now, again, what was the bottom line? Nobody hacked those DNC emails, not Russia, not anybody else. Did you know that? Well, if you rely on the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, you would not know that. You know why? Because the New York Times sort of picked up the baton from Adam Schiff and has hidden that since May 7th, 2020. So that's what, it's over a year now, what, 14 months or so? So you don't know that the whole thing about Russian hacking was a ruse, was made up, and there's lots of circumstantial evidence of that. Now, can you say that? Well, I can. And what do people say? Oh, he must be a Trump advocate. Give me a break, you know? I had and I'll finish with this. In 2017, in August, I made a speech out to Veterans for Peace out in Seattle, and I titled the thing, Russiagate, Can You Handle the Truth? And I ran down all these things about Russiagate, and the Mueller investigation had not been completed, although it had been underway for a year and a half. And I suggested to my friends that, you know, this is really, I hate to use the word, well, I didn't say hoax. It was just, you know, fabrication. The Russians didn't do it. Nobody hacked. Somebody put in a thumb drive into those machines and put it in his pocket, traveled to wherever WikiLeaks produced it. So what kind of reaction did I get? Very progressive audience, you know, pretty well educated. What was the title again? Can you handle the truth? The answer was no, they couldn't, you know? And do they know the truth now? Not if they depend on the New York Times and the Seattle Times and the, you know, so forth and so on. So that's how bad it is. In other words, stuff that doesn't coincide with the prevailing narrative is kept out of the media. And when I go up to New York and visit with my old college friends, they look at me like I have a hole in my head. That can't be true. Why? Because it's not been in the New York Times. You know, there's one little vignette I'll pass along, and that is two very fervent Russiagators got up to heaven. Okay, they died and went to heaven. And they were discussing, oh, this would be good. We'll ask God about interference in the 2016 election. So they get to St. Peter and they say, St. Peter, do you think you could ask God about interference in the 2016 election? And he looked at them and he says, well, okay. So he goes, 5 minutes back, 5 minutes, he goes back and says, well, God said there was no interference in the 2016 election, no technical interference by Russia or by anybody else. And one of the newcomers looks at the other and he says, oh no, God's in on this too. That's how bad it is, folks. That's how bad it is. So I'll stop there.